In nearly every form of competition, both individual and team competitions, there's a coming-of-age conversation that must be had. Who is the GOAT? As that conversation ages, it becomes more refined. More competitors, more history, more moments that leave viewers in awe. One day, the narrative may even shift to the point where there are only a handful of extremely talented and hardworking competitors that even get brought up. Think of the NBA, where it's largely regarded to be only two players, LeBron and MJ, and a handful at most of other names who even get mentioned in a regular conversation. Counter-Strike has slowly reached this point, seeing hundreds of top-level players compete for over 25 years. Many have never been close to the upper echelon of this game, but a select few have been considered by many to be the best Counter-Strike player of all time. Some names fade over time, while others have never been out of the conversation since they started their careers. But what makes someone a good Counter-Strike player, let alone the best to ever do it? When people talk about the GOAT of Counter-Strike, many different player qualities and statistics come to mind. Titles, rating, placements on the top 20. Some viewers factor even more nuanced things like aura or X factor, things that are hard to measure but stand out when watching a player. And with these differing ways that people value great players comes different hierarchies of which is the most important, and which subjectively makes one player better than another. These differing views lead to different opinions on who the greatest Counter-Strike player of all time is, falling to different players such as Simple, ZywOo, Device, and Donk. People who have been watching for much longer than I have occasionally throw in older generation players such as Neo, GetRight, and Olafmeister, who dominated the game prior to the Goliaths we have today. The HLTV Hall of Fame has done a great job in recent years of bringing recognition to the older generation of great players, players whose impact propped up the scene we know today that allows these current stars to shine. Speaking of HLTV, their stats will be used a tremendous amount throughout this video, so special thanks to them and the work they do for the professional competition of this game. With all these factors that make the conversation interesting in the first place, since 2019, the conversation around who is the greatest player was largely considered to be between Simple
and Simple. He needs a multi-kill, first found, Twist aggressing. They have to double peek, he's getting his shots, he's hitting another one! Simple! No! Simple! That's unbelievable! What in his name? Number one in the game! He's done it again!
and ZywOo.
What vantage point can he possibly seize? He's even been flanked. An electronic, looking for the cleanest finish. He's been turned on. ZywOo, no health really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3 and 4 and 5 and oh my god, ZywOo! Unbelievable!
These two players individually dominated their respective eras of the game above every single other player, and people had many different reasons for why one was greater than another. For a long time though, Simple was entirely a cut above ZywOo. Prior to the release of Counter-Strike 2, Simple had numerous records and achievements that felt almost untouchable. 2018 Simple is largely regarded as the most dominant individual performance in 1 year, especially considering he accomplished all of this in the Astralis era. His 2021 is similarly impressive, and in this year Simple would win his first and only major, as well as take the highest rated major MVP in history. Additionally, by 2022 he had amassed the most number of Player of the Year awards, which was 3 at the time, the record for the most aces in a Tier S tournament, highest rated Player of the Year award in history, and most MVP medals ever earned. When it's all lined up like that, it seems like surely he must be the greatest of all time, right? The big twist that most people who presently watch professional Counter-Strike will probably have already picked up on is that most of these records and impressive stats have been beaten since 2022. ZywOo is often favored in the GOAT conversation, and even when he isn't, it's rarely Simple that rivals him anymore. For many of Simple's achievements, whichever record of Simple's that ZywOo hasn't taken, Donk has. And in fact, the whole goal of this video has been, from the start, to convince you that the GOAT of Counter-Strike is ZywOo. And it's not even close. For new viewers who are unaware, Donk is a 19-year-old Russian phenom who took the scene by storm and took the highest rated big event MVP in history in his debut tournament in 2024.
Just at 17 years of age, we've never seen anything like him before.
Oh, the shadow betrays Carrigan. The AWP dispatches of him, and look at Donk do it! That's disgusting! Revolting from Donk!
Back to the two main players of the conversation, until the last year of Counter-Strike, it was much less concrete on who was the greatest player ever, both to me and many other friends and viewers I talked to. Simple had the edge on big event MVPs, longevity, major EVPs, and intangibles like eye test and X Factor that could only be understood by watching his dominance with your own eyes. ZywOo, on the other hand, historically had more consistent games and a higher playoffs rating. ZywOo also had taken his first Player of the Year award as a rookie, right in the middle of Simple's prime. At the very least, the argument had always been close. ZywOo, however, was missing certain intangibles. It's hard to watch someone who many regarded at the time as boring and say he was better than a player with similar stats, comparable achievements, and the same role within a different team who instead controlled and dominated the game rather than playing in a perfect system. ZywOo played perfect Counter-Strike, but Simple took risks that looked impossible and capitalized off of them effortlessly. Players were scared of Simple in a way they never were for any other player, including ZywOo. Once again, however, the narrative has pretty recently shifted. After a phenomenal 2025, a year where ZywOo won nearly everything while refining his playstyle, I and many others began to change our opinion on who really was the best ever. For most of ZywOo's early career, his perfect playstyle felt like he would allow you to play your style. You just couldn't make blatant mistakes right in front of him. He would put you in a box in-game, but you could pick what the box looked like. In 2025, and especially the early months of 2026, however, his style has become much more punishing and aggressive. He will force teams to play his game. He'll put you in a box the same way he did before, but he'd poke his head in every few rounds to make sure you weren't doing anything you didn't like. If you were, he'd shut you down immediately. One of the primary arguments against ZywOo being the GOAT has always been that he played too safe, gave too much freedom to the other team. In a strange way, he played too perfect for his own good, and many viewers of the game saw that as grounds for him to be worse than Simple, who did the opposite. The last 15 months of ZywOo's career, however, feels almost dedicated to dismantling this narrative. Watching ZywOo is more entertaining than ever, and he has simultaneously kept his incredibly punishing way of putting teams in a box. Even more impressively, his stats have actually improved in spite of his evolving playstyle. However, some of that could be attributed to him being on a definitively top 2 team in history. Other arguments for Simple's GOAT status include big event MVP count, which was broken by ZywOo in 2025, most HLTV Player of the Year awards, which was broken by ZywOo in 2025, most dominant individual year in history, which was broken by donk in 2024, highest rated major MVP in history, which was broken by donk in 2024, and most aces in a Tier S tournament, which was broken by donk in 2024. Even his longevity is being thrown into question. Simple debuted on the top 20 list in 2016 at 4th and started his professional hiatus halfway through 2023. When Simple took a break from competing, ZywOo had already been dominant in a way never seen before, but with all of the drawbacks of his game previously mentioned, and had only been competing at the highest level since 2019. In just 2.5 years though, ZywOo has continued to dominate, taking 2 more Player of the Year awards and coming 3rd the only year he didn't. It could be argued that 6 years of being a top 3 player holds more longevity value than 7 years of top 10 placements, but only 5 years of being top 3. If all of that wasn't enough to convince you, I'd like to put one specific statistic under a microscope: MVP medals. To be eligible to earn an MVP medal, the event a player is playing at has to be prestigious enough for HLTV to give a medal out, and the team a player is playing on must place top 2, in other words, make the grand final. ZywOo has been in this position a total of 37 times in his career since joining Vitality. 3 times he gave up the MVP to Simple. 4 other times he would lose it to another player in the final. The other 30 times that ZywOo could have ever been eligible for an MVP, win or lose, he would take it. From 2019, since joining Vitality, and to this day, ZywOo has not given up a single MVP to his teammates. He has taken the MVP in every single title he has ever won, and even in losing efforts, he is 7 for 14 on earning the MVP medal anyways. Let me put that into perspective for you. When ZywOo's team loses the tournament, he has a coin flip chance to be the best player at the event regardless of losing. He is 30 for 37 on MVPs and over 75% success rate when he is in the position to earn one, and he has never in his career given up a major final or a major MVP when he makes the final. Having watched Counter-Strike for nearly 7 years and gaining an understanding of the pro scene for the years prior to that, I can definitively say that ZywOo is the current GOAT of Counter-Strike from my point of view. At the end of the day, the statistic that I value more than any other is winning. It doesn't matter how good you do in a game if you always lose, and vice versa. It just helps ZywOo's case that not only is he exceptionally dominant individually, increasingly entertaining to watch, and has the statistics to back him up, but he also wins more than nearly any other player in history. The final point that needs to be brought up before closing the video, donk. You might have noticed just how many records he took as opposed to ZywOo, and yet I still say ZywOo is the GOAT over donk. The two main factors that it comes down to are simple: longevity and trophies. ZywOo has been doing it for nearly triple the length of donk's career so far. Trophies won is an extension of that, but knowing how to win also comes with experience. No doubt if donk had more years under his belt, he would have more trophies and he would continue to win more because of that experience. In fact, it seems almost just a waiting game for when donk will inarguably be the GOAT. The day when a player becomes experienced enough to be in the GOAT conversation is a little arbitrary. But until that day comes, I know who my GOAT is.